What's going on, Bills Mafia? With the NFL Draft less than 2 weeks away, I decided to bring you guys my top 5 dream targets at pick 30 in the first round of this draft. We have no idea how it's going to fall. There's going to be guys who were projected to go mid-early first round who are going to fall all the way towards the start of round 2. So there's a lot of possibilities for Buffalo. I have 5 guys who could be mocked as early as pick 10, and some guys who could be mocked all the way in round 2 that we'll discuss that I just love, that are high up on my board, that I would love Buffalo to come away with in round 1. Before we get into those guys, though, make sure you are subscribed for the best Bills draft content on YouTube. We're updating you guys every time there's a visit with Buffalo. Every time they're getting mocked somebody new by one of the big dogs in NFL media. And we'll always keep you guys locked in for every single pick the Bills make when the draft rolls around. So lock us in. Make sure you hit that sub button as we are 76 subs away from our next milestone of 3,500 subs right here on the Bills Breakdown. All right, so let's get into my dream picks at number 30. And this is a guy who we've talked about. You know what? Quite frankly, the guys on this list are guys that we've talked about in the past because they're just studs. And that starts with Trey Amos out of Ole Miss, who is just this multifaceted corner who has a good enough size and speed to start day one in the NFL. And we know Buffalo's number one priority, at least one of their top priorities early on in this draft, has to be a player who they feel confident can start early on in their career at that outside CB2 spot. And Trey Amos is an absolute athlete, man. Like the way that he was able to flash his traits in the NFL Combine were absolutely awesome. Ran a 4.40. His vertical is, not too great, even though he's only 6 foot, but his broad jump, his ability to cover the football field is absolutely insane. Has good height as well at the outside CB2 spot. Like he's going to be 6 foot 6'1" out there, and he's just a ball hawk. He's somebody who gets his hand on the football constantly. Is just trouble in coverage. Great in zone, which the Bills like to play a whole heck of a lot. Only allowed 2 touchdowns in coverage, 16 PBUs. So he gets his hand on the football, only allowing a QB rating of 54.5. He was incredibly productive at Ole Miss after leaving Alabama following Nick Saban's retirement. And this guy who started his college career in the Sun Belt at Louisiana, I like him a lot. And Dane Brugler does as well, has him as CB number 5. He said this: a good-looking athlete, Amos is a professional pesterer with the way that he reads receivers, crowds break points, catch points, and never stops ball searching with his length. Whether in man or zone, he has a feel for phasing up receivers from different alignments. And like I said previously, Brugler said that Amos could be a day one starter in the NFL, somebody who could start at that CB2 spot immediately with the potential to be a mid to high end CB1 in this league. He's getting pro comps from PFF to Terrion Arnold, his former teammate at the University of Alabama, who he played behind. And you know what? He had a really solid rookie season for the Detroit Lions this year. And if he turns out anything like him with the athletic traits of Amos, I'm all in on the Bills taking him at pick 30. He's getting mocked around pick 23 right now. Let's stay in Oxford, though, and go with Walter Nolen, the physical freak at that D tackle spot. Now, he is a 3-tech, kind of player where that's Buffalo kind of already has a guy in Ed Oliver playing that spot. But this is more of a just can't-miss talent, in my opinion, because this is a guy who also has, concerns about his effort and energy on the football field, a locker room concern from some people. That's why he's kind of falling a little bit lower than maybe he would go if he didn't have those issues in the draft at this point. But he was, a guy who was consensus All-American this season, first team All-SEC, led the team in tackles for loss for a really good Ole Miss defense this past year, and was able to really get to the quarterback as well. Ever since transferring away from Texas A&M, has really taken that step as a pass rusher. 35 pressures from the D tackle spot this year. Was also able to get 6.5 sacks, but is awesome in the run defense as well. Dane Brugler had this to say on Walter Nolen. He said, Nolen has areas of his game that require maturing, but he flashes big-time disruption in his initial burst and fast physical hands to regularly affect the backfield action. He will be attractive for NFL teams looking for an active gap shooter with high-end upside. And he ended up getting pro comps to Milton Williams, who just got a massive bag in free agency. So this is a guy who, yes, has to work out some of his, motor abilities at the next level, because he does take some plays off, and that's a concern that some people have. But the physical traits, his ability to be super athletic at that D tackle spot, with Buffalo needing somebody to man up the middle there, I wouldn't mind just pairing him up next to Ed Oliver, and the Bills have the best pass rush in the NFL at one point. Let's stick with the D tackle spot though and go to Kenneth Grant, who, yes, is probably the number one most mocked to prospect to the Buffalo Bills in this entire draft cycle. I mean, it's kind of getting ridiculous, but it's also for good reason. If the Bills want a true run stopper up in the middle, as he is consensus pick 30 in the consensus mock drafts out there. That would be Buffalo's slot. This is a absolute man in the middle who is just going to plug things up for Buffalo in the run game, and that's, we all know, has been their biggest deficiency over the past half decade or so. And this is a guy who, ran a 5.1, like not too bad for somebody who's well over 300 pounds at this point. Kind of an unreal vertical at his size as well. 31 inches for this guy. That's unbelievable in my opinion, but he's put up a ton of production over in Michigan as well. This is a guy who's not going to necessarily wow you as a pass rusher, but he's going to be able to get those cleanup sacks when the edges are putting good pressure on the quarterback. He's able to get back in the backfield, and overall is an elite run stopper. He had, I believe, 22 stops this past year at the line of scrimmage in the run game, and this is a guy who's been at the top of the Big Ten for the last 2 seasons. Dane Brugler had this to say about Kenneth Grant's transition to the NFL. He says, Grant plays big in a big man's game, but he also has the athletic traits and effort to grow into more than just a stout run stopper. He projects as an early down NFL starter with 3 down upside. Now, I understand you might not want to pick a guy who won't be playing much on third downs early on at pick 30, there in the first round. But listen, if you're getting B.J. Raji, yes, sign me up. Buffalo hasn't had a guy like that, and they can make Daquan Jones more of a rotational guy at the D-tackle spot if they were to go with a name like Grant. I like him a lot, and he comes from a winning program up there in Ann Arbor. The production speaks for itself. I like him at 30 for Buffalo. But we stay in Ann Arbor with another national champion, Will Johnson, getting in the mix. And as we go through this list for dream picks at 30, Will Johnson's definitely a name that's much higher up in mock drafts. He's getting picked around pick 13. A lot of people think that he won't get past the Miami Dolphins, but if we're just talking about somebody who makes plays at the end of the day, yeah, he didn't run the 40. That concerns people. His shuttle drill was not very good. But this, at the end of the day, the tape speaks for itself with Will Johnson. I mean, he had 2 interceptions for a touchdown last year, 2 pick sixes in 6 games. Yeah, he didn't play a whole heck of a lot of the season for Michigan last year, but what he did in 2023 had him mocked as an early first rounder if he ended up coming out. Had some injury concerns, but this is a guy who just gets his hands on the football and makes plays and creates turnovers. I wouldn't be mad at Buffalo having just straight ball hawk at the CB2 spot. Brugler had this to say. He said, Johnson is more good than great in terms of twitch and speed, but he has outstanding eyes, feet, and coverage IQ to match and make plays on the football. He projects as a day 1 starting outside CB in the NFL. That's what the Bills need. They cannot be going out there running Dane Jackson at cornerback 2 after they let him go in free agency last offseason. They're not bringing back Russell Douglas, and the rest of the names in Buffalo's cornerback depth chart, I'm not too keen on. So go out and get me a guy like Will Johnson if he ends up falling a lot further than people suggest. But there's been rumors about him potentially falling all the way out of round 1, earlier on in this draft cycle. How about we finish things up though with a receiver? Yeah, we only went 2 positions for the most part to start, but I decided to give you guys one more, throw you a bone at receiver, because we know the Bills need a playmaker. Why not a guy who's being comped to a former Bills All-Pro in Matthew Golden? He's getting picked around 16 in the consensus mock drafts right now, so another name that Buffalo, if they're really enamored with, might have to go up and even trade up for. Might not make it to 30, but again, you never know how this receiver market could shake out. It's not one of the more highly talked about classes in recent memory. And after transferring from Houston, which was an air raid offense, going over to Texas last year, he had his best season. He's running a ton of motion action, out of the backfield, and he's always kind of moving in pre-snap. And this is somebody who Buffalo could kind of use all over the field, inside, outside, like elite route runner, and somebody who could just easily fit in as one of Buffalo's top 3 receivers day 1. Brugler had this to say on Golden. He said, fluid in and out of his breaks, Golden shows a plan as a route runner. I love his ability to break down corners by keeping his eyes, hips, and feet in sync. That coordination also translates to the catch point with his very natural ball skills to track, frame, and finish. He can play inside or outside and become the go-to target for an NFL offense. And to be quite honest, the Bills don't have a go-to target at this point. Yes, you're hoping for a massive year 2 out of Keon Coleman, but Josh Palmer makes the most money I guess Khalil Shakir makes the most money at $15 million a year in the Bills receiver room. I think a guy like Matthew Golden is going to be in the future a guy who's making $20+ million, elite route runner, elite separator, and great, when the ball is getting to his hands. He doesn't have a lot of drops out there, and he's shored up any kind of concerns about that, last season. So I'm all in on Matthew Golden. If he ends up making it to 30, I might end up just moving on to corner and DT in round 2 and going and taking this stud out of the University of Texas. But name your Bills' #1 dream draft target for me down in the comment section. Who is your guy? If the Bills could take one guy in the first round at pick 30, who would it be? I want to hear from you, Bills Mafia. Let me know who that is down in the comment section. And if you want more Buffalo Bills draft content, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That will do it for today's show here at the Bills Breakdown. Keep us in the loop. Keep us locked in as your #1 spot for Bills draft content leading up these last 2 weeks to the big day in Green Bay. We'll see you guys all in the next one. And as always, go Bills.